What's going on YouTube? Today I'm hitting my first serious deadlift session back 10 weeks out from my first powerlifting meet. Hitting a session with this man today, my coach. He's responsible for all of my programming. We're going to talk a little bit about the specifics of what's going to happen over the next 10 weeks, as well as a few technique pointers behind my deadlift, which is hopefully going to improve my numbers moving forward. Today I've got a top set of 1 at 190, and then we're going to do some back off work, 5x5 at 150 to 160, something like that. We'll see how it goes. I'm pulling off blocks to begin with. Again, something we'll talk about in just a tick.
Back, make your way back, through. So something I noticed immediately with Nick when he was deadlifting, as he got into his sumo position, right? He had his scapula really retracted, his chest up very tall. And if I bend over into a deadlift start position, you can see how this lengthens your pull immediately. The other thing he was doing as he finished his pull was the bar was drifting away from him and he was arching his back really hard to finish. So his hips weren't actually underneath him, right? By cueing him to reach his arms nice and long, his start position improves, right? The pull's shortened. And then I was cueing him to get his weight way back and hips through at the top. And that way he has a shorter stroke through the whole lift and it's just more efficient. He's using bigger muscles to do it rather than relying on his lower and mid back like he was.
Definitely probably something that a lot of people can relate to, because I know up until this point I get a lot of activation through my lower back as a consequence of finishing my deadlift the way I'm doing it. So if you guys are getting an overactive back or feeling it a little bit more in your back than maybe you should be, try thinking about that.
The cues I'm giving Nick as he sets up now is getting into his normal start position, and I'm saying long arms, which is a cue I stole from JP Couchy. I'm cueing him to get his weight back, so to imagine falling over backwards, that gets his weight behind the bar. As he passes the knee, instead of thinking shoulders back to finish, I'm telling him hips through. So the cues are long arms, rock your weight back, and hips through. Reach long arms, back, hips through. Real good. Same thing, reach long, weight back, hips through. Good, Nick. Perfect. You can see that Nick's still actually getting his arms and his back really tight, right? But instead of this movement, scapular retraction, he's bending the bar into a U around himself. So imagining he's going to get tickled, right? That cues scapular depression and gets your lats involved. They give you a lot of stability through the torso and keep the bar close to you. So again, just like having retracted scapulae lengthens your pull, if your shoulders are elevated or your scaps are away from you, the bar moves away from you again. That makes the hips do more work, right? So by thinking of bending the bar around you and lengthening your arms, you've brought the bar closer to you and shortened the distance that you have to pull. And we're all about being mechanically efficient if we want to lift as much weight as we can.
So being my first deadlifting session back, obviously we're making things a little bit easier, a bit of a more gradual work into the whole volume discussion. I'm pulling off blocks today, which makes things a little bit easier, less stress through my hamstring, which is the one that I injured. And obviously starting off at a very light weight in comparison to what I have pulled in the past. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, my deadlift's going to start to look a lot more like this.
Good. So if you're trying to load extra plates at a commercial gym, you don't have a bar jack or anything, you can just pop a chip on the floor, roll the weights up onto it, and then it's easy to load big plates, because otherwise you have to start actually picking up the side of the bar that you're wanting to put weights on. So, piece of cake, roll it off the chip, you're good to go. You can do it with the other side as well. Not doing so.
So I've got 10 weeks to go. As I said, this man is responsible for my programming at the moment. Now, typically what I tend to find as a coach is that there tends to be a reason for most things. So, as I said before, starting off with block pulls at the beginning of my program. I am coming back from an injury. So, I assume we're doing this because it's a little bit easier than pulling off the floor. And we're obviously looking at increasing volume very gradually to begin with, simply so I don't end up tearing my hamstring again. This is where you take over.
Yeah, that's close to spot on. So in Nick's instance, one of the reasons we're using block pulls, like he said, is just to make it a little bit easier on his hips. So by having the bar elevated, he doesn't have to have his adductor or his hamstring at such a long length to break it off the ground. It also actually helps us correct those positioning issues we were talking about. So Nick likes to roll forward a little bit through the knees to break the floor, maybe because the adductors are tight or maybe because he just didn't have that cue of sitting back. So elevating the bar makes that easier. And the third thing is, as you can see, Nick's got like monstrously big, strong quads. By lifting the bar a little bit, you actually take a little bit of that initial quad drive off the floor out, especially once we've corrected that position. So it moves a bit more of the load onto those hip muscles without putting them at the long lengths that sort of put them at risk as well.
So as far as programming is concerned, obviously it's been 10 weeks out, we need to make sure that things are structured in a way that allows us to, I believe, build work capacity initially and then look at ramping up the intensity the closer we get to comp and making my training a little bit more match specific, so to speak, right?
Yeah, so again, that's spot on. At 10 weeks out, we're usually sort of starting to think about actually getting the weights a little bit heavier, but we've got to keep enough volume in there that we're still building or holding onto muscle. As we go, these block pulls will turn into just a normal light deadlift session, right? But at the moment, we're thinking, closed variations of the main lifts and the main lifts themselves, still a decent amount of volume, intensity moderate and building. And yeah, as we get closer, we're going to chip away at the accessories and get the intensity right up there and sort of try and build in enough recovery so that when it comes to peak, Nick's handling really heavy weights, I should say, and he's ready to go on the day.
Sick.
All right, so at the start of a program when we're peaking, you can see that Nick's weights are actually moving pretty easily, even though these are his final sets. That's a good thing, right? We need to actually give ourselves room so that we can build up the intensity towards the comp. If you start week one of a prep and the weights are moving slowly, you're grinding, your technique's no good, there's no way you're actually going to be able to either sustain or build that intensity to where you need to be. So at the moment we're thinking sub-maximal loads, make them move quickly, look great, build some room for progression so that hopefully if we time this well, in about sort of 7 or 8 weeks time, things are going to look pretty hard. We'll be able to peel the volume way back, Nick will recover great, and on the day he'll be the strongest he can be. I just push the floor away and it's like I'm doing a leg press, right? I do all the back tightness shit, but I just push the floor away and my body's a teeter-totter, it's easy. With sumo, because of the way your stance is, it can actually be easier to think of like pushing out through your toes. So imagine like conventional, I'm just putting the force straight through the floor. Sumo, when you're sunk down here, you can think of like pushing the floor out away from you that way. So that's when people talk about like spread the floor and stuff with sumo, they're usually talking about that. And that helps a bit as well, because if you just push the floor away, it can be easy to hang forward and then finish like that. Whereas if you spread the floor, you get a nice pop, stay upright through your torso, and you can lock your knees early and then just rock back. I think that'll help you.
Okay, so deadlifts are done. The rest of my session is basically accessory work now. So I'm going to hit a close grip bench and a little bit of back work. And I think we're finishing off some rear delts and some arms. I believe the way that my program is structured is to do with frequency and just essentially fitting everything in without affecting the way that I'm able to perform on my main lifts.
Yeah, that's right. So Nick did bench yesterday, right? But he had no upper body accessories. Tomorrow he's got a light squat variation and some leg accessories. So we've put the upper body accessories now because we know he's going to have a day off. And then he follows up with what I think is his hardest benching session. Is that correct? On day 4 he's got his hardest benching session and he's got a lot of accessories there. So we're trying to let the fatigue come down after today, but for tomorrow his legs need to be fresh. So that's why we've left it off with a light deadlift session and that's it.
So for those of you guys that are trying to write your own program, particularly if you're following along with my DUP ebook or email course, whenever you're trying to structure a program, you want to think about the accessory work that you're programming for yourself and making sure that it isn't crippling your ability to get through your target loads on your main lifts.
A really important consideration when like bodybuilders or people who've come from a bodybuilding background come into powerlifting is that you're used to chasing a lot of volume per session, particularly if you've come from training on a split. You need to start thinking across an entire week, how many hard sets of pressing can I do, right? Nick, I think, has about 16 now, which is quite a lot, and he's a strong guy, so when he does a hard set, you know, it really knocks him about a little bit. We've had to find ways to put easy days of pressing and hard days of pressing, so he gets that frequent stimulation, but he's not always so buggered that he can't actually go train really hard. If you try and follow every bench session, whether it's an easy one or a hard one, with flies, dumbbell press, tricep extensions, every time, you're going to be so cooked that your actual strength work isn't going to get any better. So you've got to start thinking about when am I going to sort of push some fatigue? Am I going to leave some rest after that? And when am I just going to get some work in that's going to help me with technical practice and keep me getting stronger without burying me for the following sessions?
That goes to when you're programming for either bodybuilding or powerlifting, is managing that intensity, managing that load. Obviously varying your intensities throughout the week is going to assist with increasing volume over time, whether you want to get stronger or bigger, and allow you to keep recovering properly so that you can keep coming back into the gym and ensure you never get to that point where maybe you are beginning to approach overtraining or feel as if you can't actually continue increasing volume. So my first accessory movement outside of my deadlifts is a close grip bench press, and this is a fantastic exercise for developing more strength in your triceps, which will ideally translate into a stronger bench press. Obviously we use our triceps to help with our bench press, so the stronger our triceps, obviously the stronger our bench press is going to become over time. I'm going to hit 4 sets of 5 at an RPE of about 7, which means every set I need to have around 3 to 4 reps left in the tank. It's an RPE based exercise, as I said, so I'm just going to take it as it comes, see how I feel today, and go from there. First working set, going to hit 100 kilos, sets of 5. Again, RPE of 7. Want to make sure that we increase volume over time, and as Will said, we want to build work capacity. Leave room to improve and to increase the intensity that I'm working at. So I'm only working to a set where I feel like I've still got 3 to 4 reps left in the tank. I got called out by the coach for going a little bit easy, so we've jumped up a little bit, and I think we're probably going to jump up a little bit more in the next set. Like his toast after yesterday. Next accessory movement, we've got a chest supported machine row, emphasis on thoracic extension. So what we want to think about doing is retracting our shoulder blades essentially at the very top of the movement. We want to look at mimicking what we're doing in the bench press to strengthen our position when we are trying to press. Four sets of 8.
Nick's back is so much shorter than mine.
Which is a good thing, but considering he made me look like a child when we were deadlifting.
So I think a thing that bodybuilders do really well, that powerlifters probably, or occasionally I think don't, is they actually choose their exercises and they sort of modify their technique really intelligently when they're doing things like rows, right? So I think powerlifters might think, oh, I want to strengthen my mid-back, give myself some stability when I bench. They think, great, okay, any old horizontal row will do. And that probably takes you 95% of the way. But bodybuilders often do clever things like pick a really good exercise, modify the technique a little bit, whether it's taking the elbows wider or closer, or thinking about that thoracic extension, any of them, and actually do the movements really correctly. So I think for that sort of hypertrophy work, they actually really maximize its effectiveness. And so for me, training with somebody like Nick, who is an expert at that type of stuff, is really informative, because it does carry over to powerlifting when we do want to build muscle to do it the most effective way we can.
Yeah. I think this exercise is actually my bread and butter, because when I first started lifting, I actually taught myself some fairly crap habits about performing pulling-based movements in this awkwardly, almost hyperextended position, thinking that I was better targeting my lats. So when it comes to actually doing this exercise for a reason, you actually do it well for a change. Okay, next I've got a lat pull down. I'm going to perform this with a shoulder width overhand grip, focusing on bracing my core rather than leaning back. I'm going to think about turning our abs on so we can actually engage the full use of our lats. If you struggle with doing that, think about almost performing a crunch as you pull down on the bar. So we're going to finish off with 3 triple sets. We've got a dumbbell bicep curl. We're going to hit a decline skull crusher and then finish off with a cable face pull. 10 reps of each, 3 quick sets. I get to feel like a bodybuilder again. It's actually the hardest part of the workout, like getting in this thing without fucking ruining myself. Done and done. Session 2 in the books. That's it for today. Come back tomorrow for more punishment. Make sure you guys follow me on Snapchat if you want to see my day-to-day workouts and how I'm progressing from week to week. I post all of my workouts as well as all of the food that I'm eating on there, on my story every day. So make sure you guys check it regularly. Until next time.